Hey, welcome. I'm going to start recording episode 6, the intro story. The story I'm calling the milkshake story. And it's kind of interesting. No, it's not really, but it's kind of funny. What I will get into after that will be interesting, I promise. So just hang tight. And, just enjoy the milkshakey ride you're about to take on this journey. Every once in a while, you'd have cravings when you were a kid for certain foods. And I remember this one time I had this craving for a milkshake. I mean, I wasn't really a kid. I was 19 or 20 years old, so technically an adult. But you can still have cravings when you're an adult. Anyways, I had this craving for a milkshake, and I wanted a McDonald's milkshake, and I decided I was going to go drive down to the McDonald's, and I was going to get that milkshake and probably some fries and a couple of double cheeseburgers. You got to round out the meal, make it, a well-balanced meal. So anyways, I was driving down there, and I was also at the time going through this phase where I wanted to record everything that I was doing, which is interesting because I'm recording this now and feeling this urge to record stuff. But anyway, so I was deciding I decided to, hold on a second. That came out funny. Let me fix that. That just kind of came out messed up. Anyways, so I was recording on a handheld tape cassette recorder, just thoughts that I was having or any kind of, random story ideas or just any kind of ideas. It was just this popular thing that there's a whole nother backstory to why I started doing that, but I'm not going to get into that now. It involved a lot of energy drinks and 24 hours of madness while recording on handheld cassette tapes with one of my friends. Some crazy thought out story for a screenplay idea. Of course, when you're at that age, you just think everything sounds great when it's coming out of your mouth. Hopefully this doesn't sound not great. Anyway, so I had that recorder and I was recording some thoughts while I was driving. I pulled up to the drive-thru and I, set the recorder down and stopped it, and I go through the drive-thru and I order my milkshake and my fries, and I get 2 double cheeseburgers, and I, waited there, and I got the order, and I paid, and I left, and I took off, and I headed out of the parking lot, and I started to drive back towards my house. I took this right-hand turn, and I was holding the milkshake in my hand, and it was kind of wet because I think it was summertime. It must have been condensation. It was kind of wet on the outside of the container of the cup, and it somehow slipped through my hand and at the same time popped the lid off of it and caused it to spill all down the side of my console, in between the seats, all over the seat. I don't think I had leather seats at the time, so it was a cloth, gray cloth seats. That milkshake just kind of absorbed into them, and it was just a mess. It was a terrible mess, and I was so mad at myself that I decided to just verbally rant. I had my windows up, and I started cussing and swearing up a storm and about how stupid it was that the milkshake was so wet and slippery and that the lid wasn't made correctly, and then I didn't have enough napkins because McDonald's never provided enough napkins, and this big mess that had occurred, and I was blaming everybody, I was blaming myself, and I was just swearing up a storm and went on this whole rant, and I had to pull over, tried to clean this up, and it was just, probably a 7 to 10 minute ordeal. And I'm sitting there pulled over, and I glance over and I could see the wheels still spinning inside the cassette tape. And for people who are familiar how those used to work, there was these two little dials that were spinning around inside of the cassette tapes, because this tape was, literally circling and winding around, going off of one spool, going up and over and around another spool, and it recorded, everything that you said, or any audio it would pick up. And I realized that the tape recorder was on the entire time. So it caught that entire profanity-laced rant, and, it was just like icing on the cake kind of thing, the whipped cream on the milkshake. But there was no more milkshake. The milkshake was all over the place. And I was just so mad because I really wanted that milkshake. But I couldn't help but laugh at myself, because I was able to get back home and play back that entire rant and just have a good laugh to myself. And I remember thinking, my friends are never going to let me live this down. And so I proceeded to delete it, and I erased the whole rant recording almost as quickly as I, recorded it, because it was something I couldn't have living around, and who knows what would have happened. And it would have ruined my chances at becoming president. Oh wait, that didn't happen. That I blame that then. No, but I basically was just, caught at the wrong time in this crazy rant, and I just thought it was hilarious. And I remember telling a friend of mine, and he started laughing hysterically, because all he could picture was this happening, and me going on this rant for a good 5 to 6 to 7 minutes, just swearing and talking about how I was so mad at McDonald's and myself, and he just thought that was hilarious. And I told him, yeah, but I erased it, so you can't go back and play it back and and then throw it back in my face, years later. But I thought it was interesting, and it's somewhat related to this episode that that I'm about to talk about, because it just happened to be this tape recorder was recording something, and I was unaware of it. And, it was a reminder that you got to be somewhat conscious of your surroundings. And, it's a good example of how the internet is always watching and always listening and always remembering. And, this is going to be the segue into that first episode. I'm sorry. Shoot. Not the first episode, you dummy. To the 6th episode. Which is going to be episode 6 of Finding Your Identity. So hang tight and we'll get started in a minute. See. I don't know. Milkshake story. Print it. Cause my milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. They're like, it's better than yours. Something. I think that's the words. It's crazy about the milkshake song. I don't even know. Okay. Moving on. Like a cow moves on. Because cows move on. Alrighty then. Welcome everyone to episode 6 of Finding Your Identity. This is going to be a jam-packed, fun episode. I've got a lot of things I want to talk about. I'm even thinking this might go too long, and I might have to split this into a 2-part episode. I have a lot of topics that I want to cover in these podcasts, but this one, I feel is important to do now. And it's about being safe on the internet, and I'm going to talk about how you can protect yourself online, and how you can take steps to protect yourself, and things to watch out for, and just practicing safe internet, as I'm calling it. So I think one of the first things that I should start with, and my first words of wisdom, first set of words of wisdom, let's call them, is don't click that link without thinking about what you're clicking. I put that in parentheses. It's the parenthetical statement for don't click that link. Don't be quick to click a link if you think it could be a problem. Sometimes you get emails that look very familiar or legit, and your instinct, when you see something that's a call to action, as they call it, is you just think, oh, you know what, I should click that, or I need to click that, or you just unconsciously just click it because you just know that's usually what that prompt is. Log in now to fix this problem. So it's an email from your bank, or it's an email from one of your social media networks, Facebook, and it says, hey, someone was trying to hack your account. You better click to log in now and update your password. Well, you need to stop and think, is this legit? One of the things that I like to do, especially when I get those kind of emails from something like a Google or a Facebook or Twitter, is I like to separately, outside of the email, navigate to that through my browser, and type in facebook.com or google.com or twitter.com, and actually type it in, get to the login page the normal way, and then log in. And then you'll see if there's some kind of alert message when you log in as to whether you need to take some kind of action. Now, if there is some problem, you're going to get the alert. They don't just send you the email and then, hope for the best. They're trying to warn you of whatever they're trying to warn you about in multiple ways. So if you do get one of those kind of emails that prompts you to take some kind of action, think first, is this sound legit? Or, hey, this does sound legit, but let me be smart about it. Let me go to the browser and let me manually, in the address bar at the top of your browser, type in facebook.com. Now, I find like a lot of people will actually do their search engine, typically Google. They'll go to Google and they'll type, facebook.com in Google, or twitter.com in Google. Now, those are somewhat common enough and somewhat innocuous enough that you can type that in and it's really not a big deal, because you'll actually, most likely that those results that are going to pop up at the top are going to be, links to things that might be useful. Those might say to log in or whatever. But you have to remember, this is this third-party site that's actually showing you a link to this other site that you're trying to get to. So a lot of times when people just open it up in a search, it's funneling that through Google, like that query to find the website, and you're getting links presented to you from Google, and it's not like it's magically guessing what it should be. And then redirecting you there. Like you got this second click that has to happen. You have to actually click on the link through Google. Now, it's not so much of a problem with, like I said, those bigger sites, but sometimes you may be looking for something more specific, like your banking or your internet or something like that. And you go to type something that says, Comcast, help, login or something to that effect. Now you type that. Now what could happen, and I've seen this happen before, is the search engine, other companies can pay for ad space. Now, Google's pretty good about, suppressing stuff or helping to keep, these bad, let's call it bad links out of the way. But people can still buy ad space. And if they buy that top ads slot, now, you just Googled some way to log into some account, and the first result isn't actually like this link that's the real link to go log into that account. It's actually an ad, that looks very similar to the link. Now, I as I'm thinking about it, it's the travel sites that are the ones that are the most dangerous, I think. If you're looking, to get the login for Priceline, sometimes you might get a Travelocity email that pops up, and it could say like, vacation pricing login or something, in the title of that ad, that you quickly look at it and you think, oh, it said Priceline login, and then you click it and you're on Travelocity's login page. I mean, it's easy to kind of get tricked by that, and that's why I feel like it's important to know when you're on the internet what the URL bar is, or the browser navigation bar, because you can use that to type whatever it is in directly. Now, if you've bookmarked sites, that's helpful, because the bookmarks pull URLs from your bookmarks. I'm sorry, that the address bar pulls the links of the bookmarks from your bookmarks. So, if you've saved them, and assuming you've saved them after you've already visited them, that then most of the time what's going to show up as a suggestion for that link is going to be something you've already visited in the past. Now, I actually highly recommend bookmarking, because bookmarking is probably one of the easiest ways to, quickly store a link for later without having to memorize the full URL, because sometimes there's crazy strings, there's encryption things at the end of it, whatever. The URL, that whole, address of the website could contain a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't want to have to try to remember to just get back to this one specific section of a website that could be the login page or whatever. But, essentially what you're doing with the bookmark is you're preserving that link exactly as you remembered it, or exactly as how you last visited it. So when you start to type it in the navigation bar, or the address bar, you start to type it, and it actually will come up and start to suggest that is not what you're looking for, and most of the time it is. So banking login or travel site login, whatever it is, it's really helpful. I think that's one way to kind of keep yourself safe is bookmarking the correct URLs. Now, you get that crazy email, you can go into your browser and you can look for the bookmark to your login for Facebook or Google, and same thing, click those, and now you jump to those sites. You log in with your credentials through the site directly instead of clicking the link through the email. Because that link could be a spoofed link. It may not be really from Facebook. It may be from Facebook, and you just didn't recognize it when you looked at it really quick. And that's kind of the thing that can trip people up pretty easily. So, and I think it's important to just pay attention to what you're clicking. So that's why I call it, this, don't click that link unless you've thought about what you're about to click, or whatever I said the parenthetical was earlier. So that's kind of my first bit of advice here about protecting yourself online, is being careful how you navigate and being careful where you land. That's how phishing happens. A phishing email comes out, and it's essentially some spammer or whatever fisher, this is PH fish, is basically trying to get you to go to a fake version of a website to enter your credentials for the real website, so now they can steal your credentials for the real website without you even realizing it. And some of them are slick enough where you'll hit that landing page and you'll log in, and it'll redirect you to the login page as if it was an error, and then you just go, oh, I must have entered it wrong, and then you enter it right, and you're on the real site, and you never knew the difference, that you were on a page that looked exactly like the real page, and all it did was capture your information, store it, and then kick you off to the real login page. So, that's one of the things that you got to be aware of. And it's, one of the ways to stay safe on the internet. That was one. And I will now talk about number 2, as these video peeps are listening in. Okay. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. Me. I'm about to sing. No, I'm not. I'm about to sip some water and record the next section. Alright, so I've talked about clicking links, which I think is one thing that's important. The second thing I think is important is just recognizing that, the way that your internet service providers, ISPs, work is anyone who's providing your internet can see everything that's going on, because they're that gateway or that stream which the data has to flow through. So it comes out of your house, goes from your computer to your router, to your modem, and then it goes out along a cable to some hub that's nearby, and gets kind of pushed, and that data keeps getting pushed all the way down the line until you hit the server, which is Google, for your email, let's say, or just even to start at your search engine, right? So all the way along the way, things can be tracked essentially, and there's stops along the way, because there's kind of like these, if you imagine like railroad systems where they had train tracks, and then they had to have switches where they'd redirect the train, sometimes around something, because maybe this track has a problem. There's a blockage because another car stalled, or another train stalled. So it's got to be sometimes detoured. So your information, can actually be sent out and go in a couple different directions. And there's things that are built into the internet that essentially facilitate that, to help move that data along. I mean, you get even more granular, and things are in packets of information. So sometimes, just an email potentially could be broken up into chunks, like as they call them, packets, and sent out and then rebuilt back together when they get to the final destination. But just to kind of keep the analogy simple, and what I'm trying to get through simple, the fact of the matter is there's plenty of places along the way as your data is traveling down these railroad tracks for somebody to essentially intercept it and look at it. A big problem with the internet for a long time has been things haven't been secure in terms of, there's HTTP and there's HTTPS, and you'll see the little green lock that's up in the top of your browser. And that's very important, because if that website has that lock, like, you're on that website, and now everything you're doing on that website, as long as it's HTTPS and you've got your green little lock at the top and it's happy, and I say happy, it's not like a different color like yellow or red. You got that green little lock or something indicating that your connection is safe and secure. Then everything you're doing while you're on that website can't be seen by other people, by interceptors. Like your ISP provider knows you are on that website, but they can't actually see the things you're doing on that website. But in the days of HTTP and there's still sites that are around that are like that. Your ISP could actually see clearly, like, the things that the type of data, or even the data itself, that's being transmitted across, because it's got to go from the server back and forth, from the server back to your computer, and your cable provider is always there, having to facilitate those requests. So, that being the case, it's very likely that the cable provider, or your internet service provider, say, which is usually your cable provider, can easily look into things and see what's going on. Now, even with HTTPS, like I said, they can still actually see the sites that you're visiting. They may not be able to see what you're doing on them, but if you're going to porn sites, it's going to know you went to a porn site. It may not be able to see the porn videos that you're watching, or when it knows that you are shopping for vacations because you went to Expedia and you went to Priceline and you went to Trivago or whatever. And, ultimately that's data that they can use to kind of build a profile on you. Like, every February this guy goes to these vacation sites and they can see that you happen to be searching for vacations in tropical climates or whatever, and they kind of build this profile around you. And maybe they recognize that you go on vacation around these 2 weeks, and they use that to determine, well, we're not going to send them, marketing, emails or physical mail during those 2 weeks because he's not going to be home and it's just going to waste money, so they can use that to their advantage. Or, they know that, they can sell that data to advertising companies that can send you, maybe emails or physical mail that's related to vacations. Like, oh, you need new bathing suits or, sunscreen from Target, whatever. So you got to imagine that everything that the ISP can see can be used against you without a court of law and without you knowing. And that's kind of a scary thought. So, the next thing I wanted to kind of just talk through and explain a little bit is VPNs and virtual private networks. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds, and it could potentially be a complicated topic, but I'll tell you what I personally use and for a VPN, because I think it's helpful to kind of understand it, and you can use it to make an informed decision about whether you want to invest in it or whatever. But essentially what you're looking at is, with the virtual private network, as it's kind of described, if you look it up online, it's a service that lets you access the web safely and privately, because it routes your connection through a server and then hides your online actions. So, if you imagine that this train analogy that I was using before is, these open railroad tracks. And let's think back to the Wild West. I love the Westerns. Like 310 to Yuma. I love that one. That one actually wasn't a train robbery. They were actually robbing a stagecoach in the beginning of it. But if you think back to how they had these outlaws that rob trains, or people who play Red Dead Redemption, that's the mission, to rob a train. Now, what the analogy is, as I'm trying to formulate my thoughts here, is you have your train leaves the station, that's your home, right? And it's got your query to pull up google.com, right? And it's in its storage, right? And so it pulls away from the station, and now these robbers or outlaws, they can pull up on horses and they can jump on the train and they can see through the windows and they can walk in the coach cabin or whatever the heck they call it, the freight car that shows the Google query, right? Now, that's because it's open, and I call the outlaws, I call them outlaws, and I consider that your internet service provider. They're the outlaws, right? So they basically can see that you're going to Google, and that's where your search is headed for. And especially if you go through a browser where it has the built-in, search at the beginning of it. So now a query, and I say query, it's basically your phrase that you typed to search. Now, if you started in your browser and it's not on Google itself, but it's on the pre-loaded page that's Google, and you type in, vacation rentals, now the text, that keyword, is going to be attached to the Google URL. At the end of the Google URL, it's going to have the words vacation rental, and then it's going to get sent to Google and basically reload the Google page with your search results for vacation rentals. Now, because that query is open and it's just a part of the URL, that can be seen by your internet service provider. Now imagine these trains are magical enough so that as soon as they leave the station, they actually drop underground and they go into, we'll call it the VPN tunnel, right? And so they disappear underground into the VPN tunnel, and now they can pop up above ground at Google, and they're at Google, but there's nobody knew how you got there. Like, your ISP all it saw was you went underground into the VPN tunnel, and now you're in VPN tunnel, and they no longer know where you went because there's millions of different paths that you could have taken underground. So now you're in the above ground train turns into subway tunnel, VPN tunnel, and now you can go off in any direction you want, and you could jump all over the internet, and you don't have to worry about the outlaw ISPs boarding your train, uninvited, and looking through the windows and seeing that you're headed to Google or Expedia or wherever. So it's one of those things that I think if people aren't aware of it, they don't realize this is a tool that can be used, and they get cheaper and cheaper. And I like private internet access. The website is actually privateinternetaccess.com. I believe they're somewhere around $40 a year, maybe less, maybe more, depending on if you get a deal. If you sign up for multiple years, sometimes you get a really good deal. I think I paid $79 for 3 years for the VPN access, which is really outstanding. And they've got apps. I think they let you have up to 5 devices. So I can have my laptop, I can have my cell phone, I can have my desktop computer, I can have tablet, I can even have it running on an Android TV device, because you can set it up using a proxy server, which I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But you can leverage that VPN service and actually, you can actually use it on multiple devices so that all these devices are all protected the same way. And the way this service works, and it's got this app that, I basically just pop open the app and I toggle it on, and I have it set so it automatically finds the best server, because there's tons of servers that they provide that are the VPN tunnels, the VPN servers. So, like I said, there was a ton of different underground paths you could go. You open it up and you say, okay, I want to route my stuff through a New York server, or Chicago server, or a London, UK server, and once it's set up, it looks like all your traffic is coming out of that London server. And it's funny too, because if you put in, that London server and then you go to Google would actually start to suggest you things in the UK as for potential advertisements, or it thinks you're actually in the UK. So it'll look at you as, physically being in that area. And that's one of the things. Now on your phone, maybe not so much, because you got GPS running and the apps are so integrated with that. It may be smart enough. Google's definitely smart enough to know you're physically not in the UK, but it still may trick the search engine. It definitely tricks, Verizon or AT&T or Sprint T-Mobile or whatever the heck they're going to be called, or Sprint Mobile maybe. But they all are pretty much blind at this point because you've gone off to this other server now. Everything's running through that, and now you're in these underground tunnels, and now you can kind of surf the internet a little bit safer, feeling a little bit better, still not clicking any kind of random link that comes through your email, because even with the VPN, it's not going to protect you from yourself. So you have to be conscious of that. Now, some of the important things to note, if you try to use this, if you try to connect to a work Wi-Fi, sometimes it just doesn't work because, the work Wi-Fi wants things to be open. They want to be your internet service provider, in essence, and they want to see what's going on their networks. They want to make sure that nothing funky's happening. So sometimes the VPNs don't work on work networks. That's one thing. The other thing is you got to really do your research on VPNs. I picked private internet access because they state very clearly a couple of times that it's somewhat been verified by the online community that they claim that they do not store any logs, any traffic logs. So any of those websites that you are visiting, anything that you're doing while you're on their VPN server is not they're not logging that activity. So if they're subpoenaed by the government, for whatever reason, to say, I want to see everything that Derek McKinney did, on the internet, they'll say, we don't track it, we don't store the logs, so we can't even provide you anything. And then they're in the clear, and then they're also protecting their customers. So when you're picking a VPN, it's important to really do your research and make sure that you understand what they do and or don't do. They don't record logs. That's one of the biggest things about a VPN. I think you want to make sure that they're not doing that, because it's a problem that, if you really think about it, that the government actually can come up and say, in this open, free internet, that's supposed to be built off of anonymity, they can go and call up an ISP and demand to see everything that person did and every website that person visited. And the Verizons and the Comcasts and AT&T, they can just turn that stuff over. They could easily just hand that over to the government, because they do store all of that stuff. That's the problem. That's one of the problems with the internet right now. The whole net neutrality thing, and the fact that they have essentially gotten so lax with it, that the cable companies or the internet service providers, they can just make their own rules now, and that's kind of an unfortunate problem that I'm not super happy about. Not a lot of people. Take it back. Blah, 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 blah. And not a lot of other people who like the internet the way it was are happy about it either. And so it's kind of the world we live in. It's it's one of those things that I think you kind of have to deal with. You're just gonna have to I guess grin and bear it for now. But it's not like you don't have options. You can use a VPN. You can, pay very little a month. 30, $40 a year, right? That's not a lot of money for the safety. And you can even get fancy, because you can even get it hooked up. So what you could do is have it hooked up directly to your router. So, if you can figure that out, it's a little complicated, but you can actually run it through your router, so then all your devices that run off of that router are protected automatically. And, that's kind of one way that you can kind of avoid having to do the 5 devices limits and stuff like that. And I think it's kind of cool. Like, I haven't done that myself personally, because there is some downsides I have to say about VPNs. Sometimes, at least in my experience, I found that the servers, you kind of got to switch them. Like, they're usually pretty good for most of the common or average amount of time that you're browsing in a session. But if you happen to move around, if you're hooked up to a VPN through your phone and you're driving and you're switching towers and your network connection is kind of shifting, sometimes it can actually like cause a little bit of a blip. Like, I've only found that happens once in a while, but to the extent where I have to turn the VPN off and then turn it back on so that it can kind of restart itself, or get a fresh session going. And I don't know with the home ones if you'd run into the same problems, but I just worry because I use it myself, but other people in my family, I don't want to leave them hanging and not know and not have a way to kind of fix it when I'm not around. As is the case, I'm tech support always. But that's what I got to say about VPNs, and I've got a little bit more to say after a minute. All right, back to it. What up? So the next piece of this that I'd like to cover is, figuring out how to spot fake things. I hate the whole fake news, the whole fake news genre that's kind of popped up in that whole bit of discourse that's going on around it. But there is things that, there are things, I should say, that are out there that could definitely be misleading and trick people. And what I mean is, you start off on a Facebook, or as I prefer, on a Twitter, and I'm looking at a news story, and, it's about SpaceX launch, and I click on it, and I land on, maybe it's Fox News or MSNBC, or sometimes it's local NBC Connecticut station, because I'm in Connecticut, news website. Anyways, you end up on the website, and what you'll see is you'll have your story about SpaceX, and you'll sit there, you'll read through it, and then you'll get to the end of it. And sometimes stuff is injected in the middle, in between paragraphs, but, a lot of times you'll find what's called clickbait. You'll see these, like, they're almost ad-like, but they're also news story-like. They're more, they're more of a news story-esque type of look and feel, which is the problem, but they're not necessarily real news stories, or they're not continuing on the local station website. They're jumping you off into some other third-party website that essentially paid to exist on that local news website. Now, the thing that's kind of crazy about that is a lot of times these stories just look so authentic. Like they, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes it'll be, what are the 5 most random, unheard of actors to die, like in the last 10 years, or, what are the 10 worst facelifts, for for some poor celebrities. It could be anything like that, or it could be, the top 10 space disasters of all time. Now, the problem is you click on these and you never know where you're getting sent off. So you don't have as much ability to verify the source of that information, which is kind of problematic. So I think that's where, you run into problems, and you have to kind of beware of where you are at all times. It's kind of like when you're out in public, beware of your surroundings. There's a man standing there with a knife, but you're just going to go on about your business and not ever look back at him to make sure that he's not getting closer to you or to other people. It's a news story that is all of a sudden now kind of somehow buried in between several pages that you have to click through to get more of the story, or all of a sudden it's popping up additional pages to things, and you're just getting sucked in because these stories just seem to kind of just keep popping up, and you're reading it. And now, as entertaining as it could be, especially to watch somebody else fall into that trap, it can be kind of dangerous if you're not careful, because you could end up clicking through to somewhere that, if you're not careful, could contain a virus, or could be a phishing scam, asking for login information, or you could just be inadvertently taking a survey and helping somebody make money, and you didn't really have that intention when you started reading the SpaceX article. So, I think it's an important lesson to kind of just be aware of your surroundings, even online. You're clicking through web pages, and you're clicking through websites, or you're clicking from social media networks to get to these websites. Just be conscious of how you're getting there. Facebook and Twitter are both now injecting ads that look very much like posts or look like tweets, and sometimes they're hard to tell that they're sponsored, or there's a company paying for something to look exactly the way that they want it to look so that you will click on it. And it's not as authentic to me. Like, it's not as authentic as an actual news story by what you're hoping is a reputable news outlet or journalist. And that's where you got to just be conscious. Just be conscious of what you're clicking on. Again, back to that, don't click on something unless you know what it is, kind of thing. And sometimes it's hard to tell what it is, but I think it's fair to say that, everybody should be practicing safe internet in the sense that they're watching what they're clicking on, or as soon as they click on it, they're, being aware of what the address bar says, or looking for signs on the site, hopefully, that you could tell that it's the right site. And I'll share this brief story about something that happened with my one of my relatives who ordered kind of an e-gift card type of deal, or it was like an e-card for a holiday, and then but it allowed you to attach an actual gift card that had a monetary value. And the strange thing was it gets sent through, and the person received the actual email with the card, and it had a number, and it had the barcode on it to the store, and they were able to print it out. And then they get to the store and have this embarrassing experience where they said, "Oh, this card has zero balance." And then it's, "Oh, what do you mean it has zero balance? I haven't used it." And then it's tracing it back to find out somebody else must have used this gift card. And so you got to start to think well, where in the chain did this fall apart? Did it happen at my end when I had the email? When it got sent to my email, did somebody else go into my email and print it out? But no, you kind of can get warnings from Google that tells you if somebody else logged into your account, or you can go back and you can look at device logins, and you say, okay, it wasn't me. So then you got to trace it up the stream. So now it was this website that provided that service. Now, well, did that website also send the same email to the person who was sending it, that potentially their email was compromised? Well, no, they don't send the actual gift card information to the sender, only to the receiver. So then okay, so it's not the sender, it's not the receiver. So it's not at those two ends of it. So it's somebody in the middle. It's this middleman website. And somehow you have to wonder, okay, well, that has separate login credentials. So did that site have a loophole, or did it get exploited? Was somebody able to log in somehow to that and then regenerate an email and have it sent to a different email? So there's like a lot of questions that kind of pop up, and this all kind of goes back to that whole thing. Just be aware of your situations. Hopefully, this is a lesson to be wary of those kind of sites that offer to essentially generate a gift card and send it out to somebody else, because that could be kind of dangerous. There has to be a better way to kind of verify stuff. I mean, maybe it's a matter of, okay, as soon as the person gets it, they should go and, you can do a balance lookup, do the balance lookup, make sure that the value is there. Maybe it was generated incorrectly, then you can at least rule that out, but then it's like, well, then you gotta kind of tell the person, maybe you need to use that gift card as soon as possible. So you, to make sure that it's not something that got lost essentially, or stolen before you had a chance to use it. So it kind of goes back to this, like, being aware of where you are on the internet or what you're doing on the internet, and thinking things through and seeing what's the company you're utilizing at the time. A lot of companies are pretty well established. You can certainly count on Amazon to order something from it and then get it delivered. There are some things with Amazon you have to be careful of, because Amazon does have third parties. And so, generally as a rule, I only order things that have Prime as the shipping, because that means it's in some way Amazon can be held responsible if something goes wrong. But it also means that you're going to get the guaranteed delivery date, which for the most part Amazon sticks to. Occasionally, it seems like if a package is coming on a Sunday, it doesn't get here, and I have to complain, because they're just really bad at delivering on Sundays. And I wouldn't have a problem if they didn't deliver on Sundays. Just don't tell me it's going to come on a Sunday, because I don't want you to tell me it's going to be delivered on a certain day and then it doesn't come. And if you can't manage to figure out who your delivery people are on Sundays, then just don't offer Sunday delivery. That's my side rant, my milkshake rant about Amazon, which I spend enough money on. I feel like I'm contributing to their extended wealth, so they should be grateful for me. And they're convenient. Most of the time I just jump on there. Oh, I need some paper towels. Oh, I need some mice traps, whatever it is. I need some gum. Like, I just don't feel like, I keep forgetting to go to the store. I don't feel like stopping on my way to wherever I'm going. And I know it's telling me it's going to be here tomorrow. Can't really beat that. It's gotten pretty great. Anyways, so I think it, kind of goes back to that whole, like, just being aware of where you are online. Now, I think this is where I'm going to choose to stop this, and I'm going to do a second part to this practicing safe internet episode, because I think it warrants it. So, as of now, I think I'm going to wrap it up here with people considering what I've said in terms of basically being aware of where you are on the internet. Be careful what links you click. Be careful what sites you go to and what they do and what services they offer, and vet them as much as possible and think through these decisions. And also consider a VPN, because, this day and age, it's going to help you in the long run, especially to at least reduce some of the profiles that are being built on you on the internet, because it's happening. Everything's being tracked. Even stores, you go shopping, every time you use one of those mandatory cards in order to get the discount at CVS or at Stop and Shop or ShopRite, you got to have the store card. Every purchase is tracked, and they're building a profile on you. Everything's building profiles, and as long as you're okay with that, then it's no big deal. But online, it could be a little bit scarier when, you're constantly seeing these ads for stuff and you just looked at vacation rentals once. And now it just gets annoying, just keep seeing these vacation rental ads that keep popping up when you're on a news website for SpaceX, a SpaceX story. So anyways, that's all I kind of wanted to say in terms of that. And I will continue on with the next episode on my 2-part series, apparently, of practicing safe internet. And until next time, thank you for listening to Finding Your Identity. And thank you people who are watching, if you're watching, and I wouldn't know either way, for watching. So until next time, peace out.